So you've decided to start playing healer in Final Fantasy XIV. Maybe you're new and you want to be a helpful supporting player. Maybe you were forced into the role, but you nevertheless don't want to disappoint. Or maybe you want to be the arbiter of life and death, ultimately deciding who lives and who dies. This Dark Knight is going to die in 10 seconds unless you choose to heal him. But is he deserving of that mercy? Will you really save this man's oh, and he's dead? Well, that's okay, no worries. We're just starting out, so we can work our way up to becoming a divine being. The first thing you want to prioritize doing is killing the enemy. Now granted, context is important. You don't want to be throwing rocks at the enemy when your entire party is dying. But that doesn't justify using your motor functions to spam heals on our party members when they are full HP. Or worse, standing around and doing nothing when they don't need healing. The faster that you end up killing the enemies, the less damage you will have to inevitably heal from them. We basically want to play chicken with the lives of our teammates, but I understand why you might panic at this idea, so let's work our way up to it. The first step to becoming a superior being is by reading your tooltips. It is hands down the best way to get accustomed with your kit. You won't know how close you can let someone get to the next dimension if you don't read what your actions do. After that, naturally, practicing is the best way to learn. At the beginning, you may find yourself acting as a benevolent deity, keeping your party full every time they stub their toes or get a little paper cut. That's fine. Especially as a newer player, you're going to want to find that comfort zone for you. You're going to overheal rather than underheal. It's natural, it's going to happen. But you want to really measure out your heals. For example, if your healing spell does half of the tank's HP, then reasonably, you don't want to do it before they are at least at half HP. That way you get the maximum value. You do not want to be spamming your divine powers at them when they don't need it. Now, some of it does involve how your actual teammates play. If your tank decides to never use a mitigation, you will have to babysit them. However, if they decide to pick up literally every trash mob on the way, you will most likely need to spot them some heals, because they're not going to get through it all by themselves. Now, if your DPS does take some damage they shouldn't have, show them your infinite mercy and spot them a heal, just to remind them how in control of their lives you are. In most circumstances, the DPS will end up doing more damage than you, so make sure you heal them up before you commit to going back to being a green DPS. Again, you'll probably panic at the beginning, but learning and practicing is the best way to become the most superior of superior beings. Now, let's talk about how to actually go about healing, because that is the most important thing you can do. Every action you do that is classified as a spell is subject to the global recast timer. These are usually referred to as global cooldowns, or GCDs for short. You cannot use another GCD until that timer resets. There are also actions classified as abilities. These are known as off global cooldowns, or OGCDs for short, that are not subject to that recast timer. These off-global abilities are best used in between your global cooldown spells. This is commonly referred to in the community as weaving. Your game plan, no matter what, is to constantly be spamming your GCDs, whether it be your spammable damage button or one of your many GCD heals. In an ideal world, you could be doing that 100% of the time, but sometimes you will have to move around. But whenever you have the opportunity, make sure you get those in. You don't want to be standing around doing nothing when you could be using them. Now, Healers and Endwalker did get a nice quality of life change, where their cast times are not the same length as their recast time, so you're no longer immobile for the whole 2.5 second duration. Now you actually have time to move in between some casts. It's very minor, but it does help out a lot and feels a lot better than it used to. Now, there is this little trick you can do called slide casting, where in the last kinda half a second of the cast, you can move and it'll still come out, it won't interrupt it. But it does take some timing to practice, But an easy way to see is to put an emote anywhere on your hotbar, and when you are able to move, that emote will light up, meaning that you can still cast the spell and move. It does take some practice, but you'll eventually get used to the timing, and it will help you out immensely. At the beginning of the game, you will usually only have GCD heals to do, so your game plan is to swap between your GCD spells and GCD heals when needed. However, at later levels, you will get more abilities to do in between, so instead of committing to a full 2.5 second heal, you can do 2 damage moves, and in between them, heal the target that needs healing. All jobs also have a secondary resource that they get access to. Generally, the order of operations I like to use is using any capped secondary resource to heal, then using any abilities that I can use to heal, then use those secondary resources, and then finally use a global cooldown heal when needed. All the jobs do have some similarities and overlapping abilities, while other jobs have vastly different abilities that they can do. Some jobs are just about brute forcing your divine energy into them, forcing their life bars to go up, while other jobs take a more subtle approach and prevent damage from happening in the first place. This is a kindness that you should not grant too lightly. I'm just kidding. Keep them alive at all costs. That is your only duty as a superior being. In 8-man content, you also have a second, not as divine co-healer, which will attempt to impress you by easing you of the burden of healing. Let them help, but as a sign of good faith, don't push all the work on them, lest they try to usurp your ultimate status. Make sure you're working in tandem with them so that everybody is happy. Now, despite your unlimited power, you don't have unlimited mana. You will run out of it without managing it properly. This is where the role action for healers, Lucid Dreaming, is your best friend. Use this when your mana roughly hits 70% or 7,000, and as long as you aren't spamming your most expensive spells, you should come out positive by the end. Healer jobs also have their own specific ways to deal with mana loss. There are ones like Thin Air that just lower the mana cost to 0 for the next spell, but also abilities like Aether Flow, where every 60 seconds you just get a free 2,000 mana. If you are using these tools and you are still bottoming out on mana, then you are probably doing something horribly wrong, or the fight is going very poorly. Healers also have a unique stat called Piety that affects your mana regeneration rate. You don't need max of this stat, but I do recommend getting enough that you feel comfortable, and then you should be good for a while. If you keep spamming your global cooldown heals, you will most likely run out of mana faster than you expect, especially if you keep using the expensive ones. However, if you keep using Lucid Dreaming and your healer-specific way to negate that mana loss, you should be fine. But remember, you don't want to be hoarding mana like it's gold. You want to constantly be displaying your divine powers to your teammates by showing off your spells. There's no reason to save the mana if you're not going to use it, but outside of very specific scenarios, you shouldn't be capped on mana. There are also some other role actions the healers have, so let's go over those. The next one is Swift Cast. This lets your next spell with a cast time come out instantly. This is mainly used in conjunction with your healer's flavor of Resurrect, but you can also use it on the shorter spells so that you can use them while moving. I really only recommend doing that if you are experienced with the fight, because keeping that in your pocket when something goes bad is a good way to regain the momentum. Next up is Isuna. This is used to cure any debuff that has this white line above it. A lot of these range from harmless to mildly annoying, but some of them are also instant death, so you don't want to just ignore them. Next up is Surecast. This prevents you from being flung back by a knockback mechanic, and can also be used to prevent yourself from being thrown about by a stage tilting mechanic, such as the Leviathan fight. And last, you have Rescue, the ultimate tool for reminding your party members that they are in fact mortal. You can either whisk them to safety, making them revere you as what you truly are. You can also plunge them into the deepest and darkest abyss. making them fear your almighty power. Don't do that last part. You may be rejected by your fellow players and subsequently ejected from the game by the true gods, the game masters. We don't want to associate with them. There's also repose, I guess. Last, but definitely not least, is your most powerful ability, rivaling that of even the mightiest of gods, Limit Break. Limit Break 1 and 2, you do to spite people. They are actually worthless. Never use them. Let the DPS feel a little joy in limit breaking, for nothing they can do measures a fraction of your true power. Limit Break 3. Reviving and healing all other party members, once again cementing you above all. This is really only necessary when 4 more people are down, or maybe 3 if your co-healer's down, or you're at the crux of the fight and you don't want to die. Can also be used as an oops, I didn't heal my raid button when you were busy thinking about how much better than them you were. Couldn't be me. Moving on, all the healer limit breaks are the same with their own visual flares, so don't play chicken with the other healer if the LB3 is needed immediately. Just make sure you're safe, as it does have a decent cast time and an even longer animation lock afterwards. The healer LB3 also doesn't leave your team with the debuff of weakness, like regular rezzing, which is just an added bonus. However, it also doesn't have the built-in invincibility that the regular resurrect does for 5 seconds, so you may find that some people who died by touching the border wall will just die again. I don't really have any kind of advanced meta helping tips for the job. Just as long as you're doing your damage spells, keeping your damage over time on them, and healing when you need to, you should be good. That's about the basics. I think as a general rule of thumb, you do want to overheal instead of underheal. People are much more comfortable being at full health than they are missing a little bit of health. It's a little bit of a panic state. But at the same time, you don't need to make sure every little bruise they get gets healed up immediately. You just want to be making sure that the second mechanic into a fight, you aren't having to damage control by resurrecting 4 people because you didn't heal them because you were busy doing your 1 damage spell. Now, if you do go into some harder content, you will have this pressure on you that you can't be the one to die, but that's fine. Greater beings make mistakes every now and then, and it's bound to happen, especially when learning a fight. But as you practice it more and more, you'll know what you can and can't get away with. And as you keep practicing it, you'll end up having what you need to do down to a science. So much so that you'll be begging one of your DPS to get hit so that you can just show off what you can do to heal them. Even if you're just going to stick to 1 healing job, or even never touch a job outside of the healer role, learn what some other classes do. It's a good way to get accustomed to what you'll be healing with when you have a co-healer, or what you can get away with on certain tanks. And that's it for the guide to reigning supreme. Remember, you are the one that ultimately decides their fates, so make sure that you give them a little divine intervention and keep them alive. Now you may be asking how I'm qualified to give you this information. Is it because of my playtime? No. My skills? Not likely. It's all about the shisui glam, baby. None of it matters except for this set. You think you're a healer? You're not till you get this set. You think all this information matters? It doesn't. Not till you look like this. This is the true defining way to be the best healer you can. This is the peak of healing skill in this game. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I just want to give a huge shout out to SunnyScribbles for the amazing thumbnail art. Go follow them over on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'll put their socials here and in the description. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I would like to know what I did right, and if you didn't like the video, please tell me what I did wrong. Any feedback is appreciated. And hopefully, I can see you guys next video.